there are genes that vary between individuals that predict addiction, predict impulsivity, and other things.
Yeah.
You're exploring how the genes that predict addiction might predict impulsivity for other types of behaviors.
Yes.
I think I heard that the answer is yes. Indeed, there's overlap.
Yeah.
So I'd be very curious to know what those genes encode for. What are the protein systems and neural circuit systems, hormone systems downstream of those genes?
Yeah. If we go back one step, just why did we think that there were going to be genes that overlap between this? The biggest set of results that supported this hypothesis were adoption and pedigree studies. So these big data registries, you get them in Sweden, you get them in the Scandinavian countries that keep track of every single one of their citizens. And what you see is that the 7 deadly sins run in families. So if you have an adoptive parent who's addicted to alcohol, you are more likely to have many sexual partners, and you're also more likely to be diagnosed with conduct disorder or be arrested for a violent crime. Even if you were never raised by that parent, and it's not just substance use to substance use or violence to violence or, risky sexual behavior to risky sexual behavior, it seems that having a family history of any of these things increases your likelihood of manifesting any one of them. So that's why we thought that there was this genetic commonality across them. So what we found is that there's many, many, many genes that affect all of these behaviors. It's massively what we call polygenic. So it's not just one thing in one part of your genome. It's distributed throughout your genome. And that those genes are most expressed in neurodevelopment in utero, in second and third trimester. So if you look at genes that are associated with all of these things and you see, okay, when in the human lifespan are they most active? They're active during cortical development in the second and third trimester. So there's something very early neurodevelopmental that's going on them. And it seems to be affecting the brain's balance of inhibition and excitation. So as your brain is developing while you're in utero, the GABA system, which is inhibitory, and the glutamate system, which is excitatory, sort of being tuned. And the balance between those two things is being worked out. If children are born preterm, part of the reason that affects their psychological development negatively is because it affects this balance between inhibition and excitation. So I think we're still very at the beginning of this, understanding the bioannotation of it, the biological mechanisms of it. But what it suggests to us is that, sometimes you hear ADHD is a neurodevelopmental disorder. I think that substance use disorders are every bit as a neurodevelopmental disorder as ADHD. I think conduct disorder, which is characterized by impulsive aggression, is every bit a neurodevelopmental disorder as ADHD. Because if you look at the genes that are causing them, they seem to be affecting this pattern of brain development very, very early in life, and this balance between the brain's inhibition and excitation.
Fascinating. I mean, I have to be careful not to go down this rabbit hole, but I started off as a developmental neurobiologist. Fetal brain wiring is,
we've
never really talked about it on this podcast, but we've talked about the effect of fetal exposure to hormones in the brain in particular, in terms of sexual differentiation. But there's a ton going on in there at these stages. And when I hear you talk broadly about, the balance between excitation and inhibition and some disruption in that or some alteration in that, setting up a probability of the expression of some behavioral disorder or choice, set of choices. It makes me wonder, about brain function more broadly does that somehow make these choices to use a given substance or to do a impulsive behavior? We have to be careful not to project, but is it an attempt to restore some sort of order to that balance, or is it an expression of an imbalanced system? It's just a seesaw that doesn't tilt all the way to one side or the other.
I think that's a really good question, and I don't know the answer to that. When you talk to people who are, experiencing a substance use disorder, sometimes you hear narratives that are very much in this this kind of self-medication frame, right? Like I took this substance and it made me feel normal. And I didn't feel normal before I had that. But that's not everyone. I mean, addiction is a very heterogeneous disorder. And so I think people's perceptions of their motivations to engage in substance use that's harmful for them, and then how does that relate to the brain mechanism, and then how does that relate to early neurodevelopment? I don't think we know, the specifics of those links to the extent that they exist yet.
My colleague Anna Lemke, who wrote Dopamine Nation, she once said that many addicts, behavioral addictions, I guess they call them process addictions or chemical addictions, that they have this feeling that unless they're experiencing something really intense, like life isn't really happening. Like they crave this intensity of experience. They want peak experience.
Yeah.
Either to numb themselves. I mean, it could be a trough experience in the case of sedatives, but that stuck with me. Implied in that is that not everyone is seeking these kind of extreme states. And so layered on what you just described in terms of excitation, inhibition balance, I kind of wonder if people who struggle with addiction are, they're craving getting out of too much inhibition or too much excitation. But this is probably an overly simplistic hypothesis.
So just thinking about that sensation-seeking thing, that driving for intensity, usually when we think of people who are chronically engaging in some behavior despite it having negative consequences for themselves and other people. So this could be drug use, this could be aggression, this could be risky sexual behavior. We can typically think of 3 dimensions of sort of personality and temperament that are often at play. And one of them is this sensation-seeking drive for intensity. So I want it, and I want a lot of it, right? And then one is this disinhibition, failure of self-control. I can't stop myself. And then another, which I think is less well-studied, is what people call antagonism or callousness, which is, I know this has negative consequences for other people, but I don't really care. Like, that doesn't bother me. And I think what you see is that the combination of factors that goes into any one person's behavior can really vary. So for some people, it's like, this feels great, this feels good, I want the high, I want it to be intense. I'm not disinhibited, I'm deliberately seeking out this behavior. I plan the drugs that I'm gonna use for the club the whole week, and I plan my week afterwards. It's not disinhibited at all, it's very purposeful. And then there are people that are like, I wasn't planning, but now I'm at the club and someone offered this to me and I can't stop myself. And then other people are like, I like it, okay, and I could stop myself, but these negative consequences that people keep harping on, the fact that my partner doesn't like this or the police don't like this, like, I'm indifferent, right? And so all of that to say, I think we need to be aware of the complexity and the heterogeneity of different people's motivations when they're doing these behaviors.